What have you done?
Rebecca, in thought, now leaves the bedside and sits.
What do you make of it, Rebecca?
Goody nurse, will you go to my Ruth and see if you can wake her?
I think she'll wake in time. Pray calm yourselves. I have 11 children, and I am 26 times a grandma, and I have seen them all through their silly seasons. And when I come on them, they will run the devil bow-legged, keeping up with their mischief. I think she'll wake when she tires of it. A child's spirit is like a child. You can never catch it by running after it. You must stand still, and for love, it will soon itself come back.
Aye, that's the truth of it, Rebecca.
This is no silly season, Rebecca. My Ruth is bewildered. Rebecca, she cannot eat.
Perhaps she's not hungered yet. I hope you are not decided to go in search of loose spirits, Mr. Parris. I've heard promise of that outside.
A wide opinion's running in the parish that the devil may be among us, and I would satisfy them that they are wrong.
Then let you come out and call them wrong. Did you consult the wardens before you called this minister to look for devils?
He is not coming to look for devils.
Then what's he coming for?
There be children dying in the village, mister.
I see none dying. This society will not be a bag to swing around your head, Mr. Putnam.
Did you call a meeting before?
I am sick of meetings. Cannot the man turn his head without he have a meeting?
He may turn his head, but not to hell.
Pray, John, be calm. Mr. Parris, I think you'd best send Reverend Hale back as soon as he come. This will set us all to arguing again in the society, and we thought to have peace this year. I think we ought to rely on the doctor now, and good prayer.
Rebecca, the doctor's baffled. The doctor's baffled.
If so he is, then let us go to God for the cause of it. There is prodigious danger in the seeking of loose spirits. I fear it. I fear it. Let us rather blame ourselves.
How may we blame ourselves? I am one of 9 sons. The Putnam seed have peopled this province. And yet I have but 1 child left of 8. And now she shrivels.
I cannot fathom that.
But I must. You think it God's work you should never lose a child nor grandchild either, and I bury all but 1? There are wheels within wheels in this village, and fires within fires.
When Reverend Hale comes, you will proceed to look for signs of witchcraft here.
You cannot command, Mr. Parris. We vote by name in this society, not by acreage.
Here.
You cannot command, Mr. Parris. We vote by name in this society, not by acreage.
I never heard you word so on this society, Mr. Proctor. I do not think I saw you at Sabbath meeting since snow flew.
I have trouble enough without I come 5 mile to hear him preach only hellfire and bloody damnation. Take it to heart, Mr. Parris. There are many others who stay away from church these days because you hardly ever mention God anymore.
Why, that's a drastic charge.
It's somewhat true. There are many that quail to bring their children.
I do not preach for children, Rebecca. It is not the children who are unmindful of their obligations toward this ministry.
Are there really those unmindful?
I should say the better half of Salem
And
Village.
more than that.
Where is my wood? My contract provides I be supplied with all my firewood. I am waiting since November for a stick, and even in November I had to show my frost-bitten hands like some London beggar.
You are allowed £6 a year to buy your wood, Mr. Parris.
I regard that £6 as part of my salary. I am paid little enough without I spend £6 on firewood.
60 plus 6 for firewood.
The salary is £66, Mr. Proctor. I am not some preaching farmer with a book under my arm. I am a graduate of Harvard College.
Aye, and well instructed in arithmetic.
Mr. Corey, you will look far for a man of my kind at £60 a year. I am not used to this poverty. I left a thrifty business in the Barbados to serve the Lord. I do not fathom it. Why am I persecuted here? I cannot offer one proposition, but there be a howling riot of argument. I have often wondered if the devil be in it somewhere. I cannot understand you people otherwise.
Mr. Parris, you are the first minister ever to demand the deed to this house.
Man, don't a minister deserve a house to live in?
To live in, yes, but to ask ownership is like you shall own the meeting house itself. The last meeting I were at, you spoke so long on deeds and mortgages I thought it were an auction.
I want a mark of confidence, is all. I am your third preacher in 7 years. I do not wish to be put out like the cat whenever some majority feels the whim. You people seem not to comprehend that a minister is the Lord's man in the parish. A minister is not to be so lightly crossed and contradicted.
Aye.
There is either obedience or the church will burn like hell is burning.
Can you speak 1 minute without we land in hell again? I am sick of hell.
It is not for you to say what is good for you to hear.
I may speak my heart, I think.
What, are we Quakers? We are not Quakers here yet, Mr. Proctor, and you may tell that to your followers.
My followers.
There is a party in this church. I am not blind. There is a faction and a party.
Against you?
Against him and all authority.
Why, then I must find it and join it.
He does not mean that.
He confessed it now.
I mean it solemnly, Rebecca. I like not the smell of this authority.
No, you cannot break charity with your minister. You are another kind, John. Clasp his hand. Make peace.
I have a crop to sow and lumber to drag home. What say you, Giles? Let's find the party. He says there is a party.
I've changed my opinion of this man, John. Mr. Paris, I beg your pardon. I never thought you had so much iron in you.
Why, thank you, Giles.
It suggests to the mind what the trouble be among us all these years. Now think on it. Wherefore is everybody suing everybody else? Think on it now. It's a deep thing and dark as a pit. I have been 6 times in court this year.
Is it the devil's fault that a man cannot say you good morning without you clap him for defamation? You're old, Giles, and you're not hearing so well as you did.
John Proctor, I have only last month collected £4 damages for you publicly saying I burned the roof off your house, and
I never said no such thing, but I've paid you for it, so I hope I can call you deaf without charge. Now come along, Giles, and help me drag my lumber home.
A moment, Mr. Proctor. What lumber is that? A moment, Mr. Proctor. What lumber is that you're dragging, if I may ask you?
My lumber from out my forest by the riverside.
Why, we are surely gone wild this year. What anarchy is this? That tract is in my bounds. It's in my bounds, Mr. Proctor.
In your bounds. I bought that tract from Goody Nurse's husband 5 months ago.
He had no right to sell it. It stands clear in my grandfather's will that all the land between the river...
Your grandfather had a habit of willing land that never belonged to him, if I may say it plain.
That's God's truth. He nearly willed away my north pasture, but he knew I'd break his fingers before he'd set his name to it. Let's get your lumber home, John. I feel a sudden will to work coming on.
You load 1 oak of mine, and you'll fight to drag it home.
Aye, and we'll win, too, Putnam, this fool and I. Come on.
I'll have my men on you, Corey. I'll clap a writ on you.
Enter Reverend John Hale of Beverly. Mr. Hale is nearing 40, a tight-skinned, eager-eyed intellectual. This is a beloved errand for him. On being called here to ascertain witchcraft, he felt the pride of the specialist whose unique knowledge has at last been publicly called for. Like almost all men of learning, he spent a good deal of his time pondering the invisible world, especially since he had himself encountered a witch in his parish not long before. That woman, however, turned into a mere pest under his searching scrutiny, and the child she had allegedly been afflicting recovered her normal behavior after Hale had given her his kindness and a few days of rest in his own house. However, that experience never raised a doubt in his mind as to the reality of the underworld, or the existence of Lucifer's many-faced lieutenants. And his belief is not to his discredit. Better minds than Hale's were, and still are, convinced that there is a society of spirits beyond our ken. One cannot help noting that one of his lines has never yet raised a laugh in any audience that has seen this play. It is his assurance that we cannot look to superstition in this. The devil is precise. Evidently, we are not quite certain even now whether diabolism is holy and not to be scoffed at, and it is no accident that we should be so bemused. Like Reverend Hale and others on this stage, we conceive the devil as a necessary part of a respectable view of cosmology. Ours is a divided empire in which certain ideas and emotions and actions are of God, and their opposites are of Lucifer. It is as impossible for most men to conceive of a morality without sin as of an earth without sky. Since 1692, a great but superficial change has wiped out God's beard and the devil's horns. But the world is still gripped between two diametrically opposed absolutes. The concept of unity in which positive and negative are attributes of the same force, in which good and evil are relative, ever-changing, and always joined to the same phenomenon. Such a concept is still reserved to the physical sciences and to the few who have grasped the history of ideas. When it is recalled that until the Christian era the underworld was never regarded as a hostile area, that all gods were useful and essentially friendly to man despite occasional lapses, when we see the steady and methodical inculcation into humanity of the idea of man's worthlessness, until redeemed, the necessity of the devil may become evident as a weapon designed and used time and time again in every age to whip men into a surrender to a particular church or church state. Our difficulty in believing the, for want of a better word, political inspiration of the devil is due in great part to the fact that he is called up and damned not only by our social antagonists, but by our own side, whatever it may be. The Catholic Church, through its Inquisition, is famous for cultivating Lucifer as the arch-fiend, but the Church's enemies relied no less upon the old boy to keep the human mind enthralled. Lucifer was himself accused of alliance with hell, and he in turn accused his enemies. To complicate matters further, he believed that he had had contact with the devil and had argued theology with him. I am not surprised at this, for at my own university a professor of history, a Lutheran, by the way, used to assemble his graduate students, draw the shades, and commune in the classroom with Erasmus. He was never, to my knowledge, officially scoffed at for this, the reason being that the university officials, like most of us, are the children of a history which still sucks at the devil's teats. At this writing, only England is held back before the temptations of contemporary diabolism. In the countries of the communist ideology, all resistance of any import is linked to the totally malign capitalist succubi. And in America, any man who is not reactionary in his views is open to the charge of alliance with the red hell. Political opposition thereby is given an inhumane overlay which then justifies the abrogation of all normally applied customs of civilized intercourse. A political policy is equated with moral right, and opposition to it with diabolical malevolence. Once such an equation is effectively made, society becomes a congery of plots and counterplots, and the main role of government changes from that of the arbiter to that of the scourge of God.